Hey there. Can't hear you. Can you hear me? Okay. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I can't hear you. I'm seeing if I need to change my headphones, but I don't think I do. Cannot hear you still, but I don't know if that's because of my headphones or something else. Try now. No. Try. I can't hear with my AirPods either. Okay. Hey, everybody. If you are just joining us, we're going to wait to get everybody in. Looks like we've got 2 people, which is fantastic. Mr. Breen is having some audio problems, but we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll wait a few more minutes to see if more people come in. Hey, everybody. If you're just coming in right now, we're going to start the review in a couple minutes. If you can let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Oh, we got 5 people. I still can't hear you, Mr. Breen. Can anybody hear Mr. Breen? Let us know in the chat. Hey, everybody. Can you let us know in the chat if you can hear us? You can. Never mind. I just figured out that it would work. Poor Mr. Breen. He's struggling. Ooh, we got 7 people. Nice. I love it. So just to let you know, the chat feature is on, so you can feel free to ask questions at any time. Do not hesitate to ask questions. We're going to start in just a few minutes. Oh, we're down to 4. We're up to 6. Yes. Who is your mom? All right, well, welcome everybody to this Unit 1 review. Remember, your Unit 1 exam is tomorrow. And so, what we really want to do for the first part is talk about an overview of the exam, and then we're going to leave it for questions for everybody else, whatever questions you may have for us. So, like we said in class today, the Unit 1 exam is 35 questions. It is all multiple choice. But again, remember the multiple choice is they've got, reading passage based questions, picture based questions, map based questions, all kinds of stuff that's going to help you show your knowledge of Unit 1 to us. And it is going to cover China and India and Africa and Dar al Islam and medieval Europe. So that's going to be super, super important to know. And again, it's not just about knowing the facts, it's also being able to apply them. And so we're going to start with a quick review of the regions we've covered and basically what we're going to cover in each region. So the first thing we actually covered in class were the world religions, and that was specifically Buddhism, Hinduism, we talked about Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and then the belief system of Confucianism. And there will be questions. I'm not so sure there are questions on Judaism or Christianity, but I definitely know there are questions on Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam. There are reading passage questions based on those 3 religions as well. We're also going to ask you to compare Hinduism and Buddhism. Then, after religions, our first region we covered was Africa. And predominantly, what we're looking for Africa are 2 things. Number 1, what led to the development of sub Saharan Africa? So, what we're looking for there is the Bantu migrations and how the Bantu migrations impacted sub Saharan Africa. And then we're also looking about the spread of Islam into Africa and what kind of impact that had with the creation of the Islamic empires of Ghana and Mali, and why Mali is such a good example of a strong African empire. And then from Africa, where we went to is China. So we went all the way on the other side of the world. And for China, what we're really looking at is, do you understand Confucianism? Do you understand how the Song dynasty came to power with the mandate of heaven and dynastic cycle? Do you understand how the Song dynasty, how and why the Song dynasty created the government it did with Confucianism and the scholar gentry and the civil service exam? Do you also understand how Chinese innovation improved its economy? For example, do you understand how paper money improved its economy? Do you know how the production of silk and porcelain improved the Chinese economy? Do you understand how champa rice led, or really the economic effects of the champa rice and the demographic effects of champa rice? Do you understand the impact that China had on other regions, such as the rest of East Asia, especially Korea and Japan? And then, do you understand how China used technologies like gunpowder, like the Grand Canal, to be able to really strengthen its society as well? And then from China, we move to the Dar al Islam, the Islamic world. And there we're looking for some basic things. Do you understand Islam? Do you understand what pre Islamic Arabia was like? Do you understand the 3 reasons as how Islam spread: missionary, merchant, and military? Do you understand the creation of the Abbasid Caliphate and the impact that the Abbasid Caliphate had on the world, economically, socially, politically? And then also a huge part of it is those intellectual innovations with the House of Wisdom and the impacts those had. And then finally, after we, as I've said to my class, after we've we visited the Nintendo Switch areas of the world. Then we go to Western Europe, and it's like the 1980s black and white Game Boy, the sinkhole of the post classical world. And what we're looking for there is, do you know what led to the political decentralization in Western Europe, like the fall of Rome? And then once we had political decentralization, why was feudalism the system they created? Why above anything else? And in my classes, we said it's this or die. That was the logo for feudalism. And then do you understand Menoralism? Like what went on with the manor, why it had to be self-sufficient, and the role that the serfs played. So that's really, really what we're looking for you to understand for this Unit 1 exam. And so now what Breen and I want to do is we want to open it up to any questions that you may have or any clarification that you need for any of those topics. So hit away in the chat. Let us know what you got. It's awfully quiet in the chat. This is your review, what you need to know. Breen, you seen anything in the chat? Ladies and gentlemen, get out that study guide. In fact, I can share my screen with you real quick, and I can show you that study guide, ladies and gentlemen. This is the one we are talking about. So let me share my screen with you. Start screen sharing. Let's do this one. Share. And I'm going to put the study guide over there because it didn't work. So there's your study guide, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, let me blow that up a little bit for you. Okay, so this is really what we're looking for, and this is what we really want you to be able to understand, right? And so everything that we've talked about is my mouse is going haywire, and that's really clever. Everything that we've talked about is in that study guide. So really what we want you to be able to do is look at that study guide and see if there is anything that you do not understand completely or that you want more clarification on. All right. So anything about East Asia, anything about South Asia, anything about the Dar al Islam, what questions do you have for us? What questions do you have for us? This is your opportunity to ask. Oh, yes, we can explain how Chinese cultural traditions influenced Korea and Japan. So as you know, like when you look at East Asia, okay, you have China and then you have Korea off to the side and Japan. And China had been established for 1,000 years prior to Japan and Korea making any real substantial contact with China. So they'd already had Confucianism and Buddhism and a centralized government. And as China and Japan are starting to develop, what they're really looking for is what's going to help us develop into a stronger nation. And so they start thinking about maybe we should talk to China a little bit and see what we can use that seems to have worked for China. Now, for Korea, it was a little bit different because China actually attempted to take over Korea, and they did for a small period of time, but then the Koreans kicked them out. But the real goal, the real cultural exchange, and the real purpose for both Korea and Japan is to take the things that worked for China and try to adapt them into their nations. And so that's why we see Korea and Japan both adopting Confucianism, because they saw it work so well for the majority of the time in China. They're like, let's use Confucianism as the basis of society. That everybody wants a harmonious, respectful society. So let's try that. And then Korea wanted to also institute Confucianism in their government system. They wanted a similar system to China. Japan, not nearly as much. And then they both take Buddhism because it works with the religions they already use. And so they both adopt Buddhism as well. And then both Korea and Japan are also kind of interested in the Chinese forms of art and the Chinese forms of calligraphy and their characters for their language. And so they adopt a little bit of those as well. But really, those are the major things we're going to see in terms of adoption or influence of Chinese culture on Korea and Japan. And again, they're going to adopt the things that they either think look pretty or nice, or the ones that they believe are going to make their nation stronger. So that's really what we see for Korea and Japan. Hopefully that answered your question. If not, hit us up in the chat again. All right, the role of the Berbers in Africa. So the Berbers, oh, I wish I had a map, but pretend this is Africa and this is North Africa. And in North Africa, we had a group of people called the Berbers, and they were really merchants, and they were predominantly at first merchants for across North Africa. But they also had contact with sub-Saharan Africa. They were the merchants who could traverse the Saharan desert, not a lot of the time, but they could traverse it to have contact with West Africa. Now, when Islam spreads and the merchants from the Middle East, from the Arabian Peninsula, start heading into North Africa, we know that Islamic countries, pre-Islamic Arabia, and then it becomes Islamic Arabia, heavily interested in trade. We know the Arabian Peninsula doesn't have a whole lot of resources, so they're going to have to trade with others. And one of the first groups they come into contact with are these Berbers. And the Berbers they see have these awesome things like salt and gold. And they're like, hey, where'd you get those from? And the Berbers are like, yeah, we took a few journeys down to, through the Sahara and into West Africa. We got a little stuff. And these Muslim merchants are like, well, we want some of that stuff. That's highly valuable stuff. And so as a result of that, we're going to see the Berbers move through the Saharan desert more often. This is what leads to the creation of that trans-Saharan trade route. And so it will be the Berbers who use the trans-Saharan trade route to make contact with West Africa, to access that gold and salt, which they will then share with Muslim merchants in North Africa. So they're really instrumental in starting that trans-Saharan trade route and then getting that trade with West Africa. And hopefully that answered your question as well. What else we got for us? We're here for an hour. We can answer anything you want. Except Siri doesn't want to. What else we got? Hit us up. Let me share my screen again. Menoralism. Yes, Ashley, we can talk about menoralism. All menoralism are the things that are going on the manor or fief. Because remember, manor and fief, they're the same damn thing, right? It's just that big plot of land that the king gives to a lord. So menoralism is basically the economic system that goes on in that fief. Basically, what ends up happening, as we talked about, is that fiefs have to be self-sufficient. It's too dangerous to trade. Their infrastructure has fallen apart after the fall of the Roman Empire. And so whatever a lord and his knights and his serfs need has to be produced on that fief. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And the serfs are going to be the ones to produce that. They're the ones doing the farming. They're the ones grazing the animals. They're the ones that are repairing buildings or repairing roads. And the serfs, even though it wasn't the best of existence, they're forced to work on those manors because they don't have another choice. Remember, our motto for medieval Europe is it's this or death. And so basically the serfs are forced to work the land in return for protection and food, basically food, clothing, and shelter. And the reason they accept this is because there's really no other alternative. And the really crappy thing about serfdom is that once you're a serf, your kids are a serf and their kids are a serf. So it becomes this hereditary thing where you just can't get off the land. Good question. Do we need to know all the mathematical and medical advances? You do not. That is, you that's a book, right? You just need to know that in the House of Wisdom, because of the transfer of knowledge, because of the translation movement, because of scholars from around the world joining together, we do see a lot of advancements in mathematics, and we see a lot of advancements in medicine. And so, if mathematics, if you talk about algebra, if you talk about the connection to astronomy, you're good to know, good to go. For medicine, just understand that they understood bacteria, they understood how it worked, they understood the human body. That's really what we're looking for. Good question. I want to share my screen really quickly because this was one question my students had in class. And so let's share really quickly. I'm sorry it's not bigger than what it is, but this is a picture right here of Angkor Wat. I have not been, my sister has, which strikes me as angry because she's not the history teacher. I am. But anyway, this is Angkor Wat. This is in Southeast Asia. This is in Cambodia, which is a nation in Southeast Asia. And the reason that Angkor Wat is so important is because it's a huge example of what we call religious diffusion. And what ends up happening is that if we look at India, right? It's right in the middle of the Indian Ocean. On one side is the Dar al Islam. On the other side, we have basically China. And so we do see the diffusion of Islam from the Dar al Islam into India. And then from there, those three religions are going to be diffused into Southeast Asia, into Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam. Hinduism and Buddhism, especially, and Islam a little bit later on, become really popular in these Southeast Asian nations. And so when we look at Angkor Wat, we look at the architecture. That architecture is very reminiscent of Hindu architecture, and there's also elements of Buddhism architecture. And you're going to see this in a lot of places. How we can tell there's been religious diffusion, it is because of the architecture that we see. So when you look at Angkor Wat, they're not really stupas, but if you can see right here, up here, these, we'll just call them stupas, but they're not really not. These are elements of Hinduism architecture, right? Definitely like the steps, and we see the coming to the sky. There are also elements of Buddhism in here as well. And so this temple was built for Buddhist and Hindu traditions, and so that's why it looks like Buddhist or Hindu temples, because that is exactly what it is. And so when you see architecture like this, your brain should automatically think Buddhism and Hinduism and know that there was religious diffusion as a result of that. Exactly. Good. What else you got for? We got 23 people here, Breen. We are rising in popularity. What else do you have for us? What else can we answer for you for this upcoming exam? For religions, just make sure that you understand the basic characteristics of the religion. So you're going to have to know the caste system, dharma, karma, samsara, and moksha for Hinduism. You're going to need to know the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, or at least some elements of the Eightfold Path for Buddhism. For Islam, you definitely need to know the origins, the five pillars. For Christianity, Jesus died for your sins, 10 commandments, all that stuff like that. So you definitely need to know the basic elements, and definitely the basic elements of Confucianism as well. What else we got? Let us know in the chat. Otherwise, it's going to be really boring because I'm going to sit here and stare at you. So Sufism is an offshoot of, well, it's an offshoot of Islam. It comes about, well, it's a little bit more complicated with that. I'll come back to that in a minute. A refresher on the Abbasid Caliphate. Bareen, if you can hit up Sufism in the chat, I'll do the Abbasid Caliphate. So the Abbasid Caliphate is the second Islamic empire. The first one is the Umayyads, right? And the Umayyads are responsible for that huge territorial expansion of Islam. They're the ones who gain all the territory, but it's really going to be the rule of the Abbasids that's going to make that Islamic world. So the Abbasids come to power and they overthrow the Umayyads. They come to power, and they definitely have a better understanding of the people who they are ruling over, because remember, it by this time there these it's got the territorial expansion has included part of Europe, which is Spain. It's included North Africa. It's got the Arabian Peninsula. It's got some parts of Central Asia, and eventually it's going to get into India. And the Abbasids understood that this was a very diverse group of people, and if they tried to rule like the Umayyads did, where the Umayyads weren't tolerant of very many people other than, the noble Muslim Arabs. If they practice that same thing, they're going to have a lot of rebellion on their hands in the empire. So they chose to take a different route. And so the first thing they did is practice religious tolerance. They certainly wanted people to convert to Islam. They obviously were big believers in it. But if you chose not to, you chose not to, whether you were Christian or Jewish or Zoroastrianism. If you chose not to convert, that was fine. The only thing you had to do was pay that jizya tax, the non-believer tax. Now, I will tell you this: the Abbasids were pretty tolerant of monotheistic religions. When it got into polytheistic religions, they had a little bit tougher of a time. But anyway, they are religiously tolerant, which makes people in their empire feel respected. The other thing they understood is because they were such a big empire, they were going to have a really efficient and effective government. And they decided to create a form of meritocracy. And so this is the idea that they are going to put the best people in the best places in government. You weren't going to get it because your dad was rich or your dad knew someone who knew someone. You were going to become a part of the government because you were going to be the best person for the job. And if that meant you were Persian, great. If that meant you were Christian, great. If that meant that, you were somewhere in North Africa, great. They didn't care as long as you were the best person for government. So that is a meritocracy. Now, unlike China, there was no examination system. You didn't have to take an exam. You just had to show that you were the best person for the job. And then once they did that, the caliph, the leader, understood that there was no way that he could effectively oversee the entire empire by himself. And so then what he had to do is create a bureaucracy. And so what he did is he created different government, I don't know what we say, sections in order to meet the needs of the people. So you had like a department of military, and you had a department of treasury, and you had a department of social affairs. And he put the experts in those fields and had those people then figure out what is going to be best for the empire. Now, they had to share their ideas with the caliph, and the caliph was the only one who could say yes or no, but those ideas were highly valued, and he usually listened to what his administrators said. And then also, even further, what they do is the Abbasid Caliphate divided their land into provinces. Think of them like states, kind of, sort of. And each province had some local control. They didn't have to contact the caliph or anyone else. They could make local decisions. So that things could be done fairly rapidly. If it was more than a local decision, if it was something that involved a much bigger area, then that did have to be approved by the caliph. But all those things were put in place to make sure that the empire could be run efficiently and effectively. And it actually was for a long period of time. Good questions. What else can we answer for you? Hook us up. Let's see. Nothing in the chat yet. Let's see. What else do you need to know for the Islamic world? Oh, you need to know the House of Wisdom. We should know that in and out after the virtual museum. We should have that. Yeah, exactly. Hey in Japan is just the period where they really start to adopt a lot of Chinese culture, whether it's Confucianism, whether it's the way they dress, whether it's the Chinese characters for the language they use. That's just the time period where they're like, ooh, China, cool. Okay. But understand that even though Japan, at least early on, as they're trying to establish a single nation, they adopt a lot from a good amount from China. They will slowly back off of that and start doing things that are more Japanese in culture. Axum is not on the test. Don't worry about it, Loris. It's not on the test. Let's see. Did I miss anything in the chat? I can't tell. Yeah. Nope, we're good. What else we got? Anything about Africa? Anything about China? Oh, the Grand Canal. Someone asked me about the Grand Canal today. Let me see if I can get a picture of the Grand Canal. Grand Canal map. Ooh, these maps suck. All right, we'll do this one. See if I can blow that up into a bigger picture. I'll put this up on the screen in just a minute. Come on, Grand Canal. All right, that's as good as I'm going to get. All right, so the Grand Canal, even though it wasn't started under the Song Dynasty, it was continued under the Song Dynasty. So what you can see is you have the Yellow River up here, and you have the Yangtze River up here. Now, early on in Chinese history, this river, the Yellow River, is where most people lived and most people farmed. Great. But the Yangtze is also a good river to farm on as well. But prior to this Grand Canal, it was super, super hard to travel between the Yangtze and the Yellow Rivers. You're like, oh, good God, it's going to take forever. I'm not going to do it. But there's a lot of valuable resources along the Yangtze, which is down here, and a lot of valuable resources that's on the Yellow. Plus, the Yellow River was getting overpopulated, and we know what happens with overpopulation. That land turns to crap, and then we can't use it at all. So it was a Sui dynasty who did this. You don't need to know them. They started building a canal that connected the Yellow and the Yangtze rivers, as you guys can see right up here. And so the whole purpose was, if we created a canal that would link the rivers, then it would be much easier to transport goods and move people along to the Yangtze River and open up the trade between these two regions, and also populate the Yangtze. So the the land around the Yellow River Valley wasn't going to get over farmed, so it would be useless. So all this really did is it opened up connections between the two regions in China. They could transport goods up and down the canal, and it also allowed people to move around the Yangtze River Valley, which is going to open up more land for farming, which is really good for China because they have a huge population. All right. Yeah, that's it. What Barine said is exactly right. It's just strengthening Confucianism and bringing it back into society, and it does involve the scholar gentry and the civil service exam. Excellent. Ooh, what else we got? I'm in it to win it today. And by the way, this is nothing more than bubbly water. Just wanted to show everybody bubbly water. Strawberry mango. Yeah, Laura says exactly right. As long as feudalism existed, if you're a serf, your kids are a serf, they're a serf. You never had the ability to make money. Think about it this way. Remember? Oh no, it's a different class. That was US history. You never had the ability to make money. And if you can't make money, you can't save money. And if you can't save money, you can't buy your own land or do anything else like that. And it was extremely hard to get land to begin with. That's why the lords were thrilled with this feudal contract. For the serfs, there was going to be no opportunity to escape that, because you need money to escape that. They were never going to be able to do it. They barely produced enough to pay their taxes to their lord and keep food, clothing, and shelter. Oh, and serfs is spelt, you guys, just so you know, SERF. The it's primary source section. All you're going to do is get some reading passages. Some will be primary sources, some won't. And you're going to be asked questions based on the reading passage, and then whatever content or region the reading passage relates to bring in some of your historical knowledge to be able to answer the multiple choice questions. We're not going to ask you what the point of view is. We're not going to ask you on this test purpose or anything like that. It's just, can you take the reading passage plus your historical knowledge and answer multiple choice questions? What else can we answer for you? I just feel like there's so much more we can answer. Oh, you're very welcome, Lily. What else can we answer? We've hit Japan up. We've hit Buddhism, Hinduism, Confucianism. We've done Africa. Yeah. You've done Dar al Islam, Umayyads, opposites. You're going to need to know some similarities and differences between religions. That's going to definitely be with Hinduism and Buddhism. And says textiles. That's just like asking if we know innovations that were made. Textile just means cloth, and for China that will be silk. That's what textiles mean. Textile is just a form of cloth, and if it's a cloth coming out of China, it is most likely going to be silk. If it is a cloth coming out of India, it is most likely going to be cotton. And if it's a textile coming out of like the Dar al Islam, it is most likely going to be in the form of like a Persian rug. Yeah. Never apologize for asking a question. Asking questions is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. Yes, you definitely need to. For Southeastern Asia, the big thing you're going to need to know is that there was religious diffusion into Southeast Asia, especially Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism. That's really. Let me see if I can get up a map here real quick. Religious diffusion, Southeast Asia map. Let me see if I can call up a map. Mm. Is this one a good one? I'm checking. I just can't. I'm blinded by my webcam. Oh, good God, no, that's terrible. Sorry. Let me see if this one's good. Okay, let's try to do this one if I can blow it up. Oh, that's actually a good blow up, so that actually might work. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. And so I want to show you what we're looking at here. This is a map, and this is really showing like the spread of Hinduism, but Buddhism follows the same path. It starts in India, and then via trade routes, which we haven't talked about the specific trade route, but via trade routes and missionaries, especially for Buddhism, what we're going to see is we're going to see it go into like Burma and then eventually into Southeast Asia, which is right here. So this is religious diffusion, and diffusion just means it spreads from the original place to new places. So we're going to see religion diffuse or spread from South Asia or India into Southeast Asia here. And we'll see that for Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. No questions on Ghana. There's no questions, but you do need to know the Bantu migrations. Those are really important. Oh, you're welcome, Lily. Did that answer your question? Da, 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 da. Make sure you understand what led to political decentralization in medieval Europe. There we're talking about the invasions and the fall of the Roman Empire, and then why feudalism was the system that was chosen. Because really, feudalism it's this or die. Why is that the system? Could you go over the role? Yeah, that's a great question, Madeline. Hello, welcome, by the way. So, the role of women in religion. So, let's talk. We'll just go from the beginning and we'll just move forward. In Judaism, because that's one of the first religions, the role of women is basically, it's not to serve the man, but definitely it's a more patriarchal society. And the role of women in Judaism, have children, raise them in good Judaic fashion. That's going to be the same thing with Christianity. Even though in Christianity, men and women are equal in the eyes of God, their roles definitely are not. Christianity tends to be a more patriarchal society. You know, women there to help raise good Christian children and to help, keep their husbands in good Christian faith. For Hinduism, women were not as valued in the faith, regardless of whether in the caste system, whether a woman was a Brahmin or a Kshatriya in that caste system, women, it was still a patriarchal society, male dominated, so they didn't have as many rights. Definitely, we see arranged marriages in Hinduism. We see the woman being subservient to the man. So that in Buddhism, it's equal, right? This is why we see a lot of women actually convert to Buddhism in India, because it's an egalitarian or equal religion. And so you do see women in a Buddhist society take on more prominent roles, like nuns. So they did have a lot more rights under a Buddhist society. We know under Confucianism, oof, there is no rights for women. They're not highly valued. They are subservient to men. It's a very patriarchal society in Confucianism. No one's overjoyed when a woman is born. It's pretty crappy. And then with Islam, you see definitely a lot more equality in the Islamic faith with women. All believers are equal in the eyes of Allah, according to the Islamic faith. We know that once Islam came about, women could divorce, they could choose their own partners, they could own property, they could gain inheritance. So we definitely see a lot more equality under Islam. The questions about Buddhism. Basically, you're gonna need to know the Four Noble Truths and parts of the Eightfold Path. You're gonna have to be able to compare Buddhism and Hinduism. What is similar between the religions? What is different? What else we got? We still got 22 minutes. You can ask whatever you want. You're very welcome, Kale. Thank you for asking your question. I'm trying to think, Breen. What have we covered that definitely is going to be something that's going to be a focal point of the exam? Talked about Islam. We've talked about Confucianism. Yeah, we've talked about a lot, actually. Don't forget to study the Bantu Migrations. Ashley, great question. What are the effects of agriculture on social organization? Um, Basically, because of the manorial system and because of the need to be able to produce enough food on the fief, serfs have to be tied to the land. They can't leave. They can't leave because they'll probably be killed, but they also can't leave because the Lord needs that labor to produce enough food for the people on the fief. And so that because of the agricultural needs, you are directly tying those serfs to the land. Good question. You do need to know that Baghdad, is it Shalin? Did I say it wrong? Shalin? Oh, God, I know I said it wrong. You're just going to have to know that Baghdad was a very cosmopolitan city. Lots of trade going on, lots of learning. It's like the New York City of the post classical era. Good question. Is it Shalin or Shalin? I need to know. Phonetically, tell me. No, we're not going to ask about specifically Mahayana or Theravada Buddhism on the test. No. Nope. Just Buddhism in general. That's a good question, Hamilton family. What else you need? Both of the A's. So it's Shalin? Is that right? I'm not going to be happy till I get this right. I'm not going to lie. I hate mispronouncing students' names. It makes me feel bad. Okay, that would be perfect. Yes, please tell me tomorrow at school. I will be so happy. That will work. Let's see. Anything else? I think we've covered like almost everything, at least most aspects on the study guide. Shalin. Okay, got it. Good question. Loris, yeah, the Bantu migrations, basically the whole idea is the Bantu are in sub-Saharan West Africa, right? And they're doing their farming thing and their iron working thing. But like we said, the grasslands were kind of drying up during that time period. They were producing a food surplus, which always leads to a population growth. And that area just could not keep up with the demands of the population growth and plus some ecological issues. And so it forced the Bantu to move. They still want to farm, they still want to do iron working, so they've got to find places to be able to do that. And so, and I can't tell if I mirrored or not. So basically, if this is West Africa, the Bantus move south, they move central. Let me get a map for you. Good gracious, it's easier to do that way. Let me share my screen. Let me find Bantu migrations map. Images. There we go. That's a good one. Let's see if I can blow that up to the size of what I need. Yeah, close enough. All right, I'm going to share my screen with you just again. And what you'll see is the Bantu migrations. Share. All right. So don't look at this guy. I don't know who the hell that is. All right. So the Bantu migrations, as you guys can see, the Bantu lived basically here, sub-Saharan Africa, a little bit more west, I think, than what this map shows, but close enough. And then what's going to happen is because of the population growth and because of a little bit of the drying up of the land, the Bantu are going to move south, as you guys can see with the arrows, and they're going to move a little bit east and a little bit central. Everywhere they go, they spread their farming knowledge, they spread their iron working knowledge, and they spread their language. And so really they're responsible for a huge part of development in sub-Saharan Africa. So any areas in sub-Saharan Africa that develop farming, sedentary agriculture, thanks to the Bantu. Any place that you see iron working, it's thanks to the Bantu, whether it's weapons or whether it's tools. And this is also why in most of sub-Saharan Africa, it is a Bantu-based language. Now, the dialects are going to be different, but the language itself is going to be Bantu-based, which gives some commonality amongst sub-Saharan Africa. So hopefully that answered your question. Wow, Dumb Donut is not even in AP World, but wants to continue watching. Yes, we've been live here. Ooh, maybe we have people from outside of our class, Barine. You don't, Amy, that's a great question. You don't need to know a ton. You just need to know basically what was going on in the House of Wisdom, that we see a lot of intellectual developments because of the desire of knowledge and curiosity of the opposites. We're going to see Indian scholars in the House of Wisdom, Chinese scholars. I mean, we're going to see all kinds. And because of that, and because of the opposite desire to translate those Greek and Roman texts, that you just got knowledge coming out of your proverbial ears. And just know that there are advancements in medicine, there are advancements in mathematics, in astronomy. You don't really need to know the specific ones. You just need to know that there were advancements in those fields and why there were advancements in those fields. Stasia, just know that there's like algebra, the Arabic numeral system, that would be important. God, I could talk about history all day. Right, Barine? We could do it all day long. I can never get tired of it. Unless it's Greek and Rome, then no. And I think I just offended like 3/4 of the people on here right now because you guys love their Greek and Roman history. What else can we answer for you? Oh, you're very welcome, Stasia. What else can we answer for you? We got about 15 minutes left. Yeah, Loris, that's a great thing. Like you could use just knowing that through the House of Wisdom that you get the creation of the Arabic numeral system, which is the system we still use today. That would be enough as an illustrative example. I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't dislike Rome. I would much rather teach Rome than Greece. But Greece, outside of Sparta and Athens and how much they hated each other, and maybe Socrates dying by poisoning because he was so strong with his convictions, just not my fave. Sorry, Lily. Oh, good point, Barine. Really good. Why is something important? Why does it matter? Why should we know about it? What does it show us? What does it demonstrate? AP likes to use that word a lot. Demonstrate. Oh, you are so very welcome. We enjoy it as well. Yes, that if feudalism was a political system, Menoralism is the economic system. That is exactly correct. So for feudalism, what we're talking about is that feudal contract, right? The king doesn't want to give his land up, but he ain't got no choice. This is the way it's going to be. So when the king says, "Hey, I'll give you a piece of land," and the Lord says, "Oh, thank you, O king, and I swear my fealty, my allegiance, my homage to you." That's that feudal contract. That's that political organization, the idea that there still is a king, but that king has very little power. Most of that power is going to lay in the hands of the lords because they get to control whatever happens on their fief. Excellent. I can't remember if Barine, if there are any questions about the Sunni Shia split on the test. Yeah. So good question, Madeline. Bureaucracy just is a form of government or an aspect of government that's used when your empires get really big. Right. So bureaucracy we're going to see in big empires like the Song dynasty, like the Dar al Islam. And that is because most of those civilizations there is a single leader, right? They're very centralized systems, and because of that those single leaders tend to understand there is no way they can effectively rule that empire all by themselves. They don't have enough knowledge, they don't have enough time. So what they do is they create what are known, let's see if I can get a picture of a bureaucracy. They create departments. Bureaucracy image. I don't know if we're going to find a really good one here. Let me see what I can find here. Bureaucracy image, images. Um, yeah, let's just use this one. This is not a great image, but it'll work for now. Except now I can't find the. Let me go back. So I'm going to share my screen, and I don't think the image is going to be very big, but we'll go with it anyway. So take a look at this image on the right-hand side, right? And think of it this way, that this guy would be the leader, the emperor, makes all decisions, caliph, whatever you want. But because he understands he can't rule effectively by himself, he has this cabinet of ministers, or maybe a group of people that he highly, highly trusts and highly respects, who have a lot of knowledge, who are going to help him rule. Now, these ministers down here don't really have any political power. They are not the ones who are able to pass laws, but they are the ones who are going to advise the leader and tell him, hey, when it comes to military, maybe this guy says militarily, this is what we have to do. And maybe when it comes to finance, this is the guy who says, hey, this is what we need to do for taxes. And maybe this is the social department who creates like justice. And he's like, hey, this is what we need to do for justice. This guy talks about education. And so they're experts in the field that help advise the leader because he just can't get all the knowledge himself. And then once the leader makes a decision, then he shares a decision with all these guys who then share it with all these guys who are then going to share it with the rest of the empire. It's just a way to get the best decisions made for an empire. And so the bigger the empire, the more centralized an empire is, the more we're going to see bureaucracy. So we're going to see it in Song China. We're going to see it in the Islamic world. And I don't know if we really see it anywhere else. We'll see it in India, but because we're not asking questions about specific Indian rule, but in big empires, that's when we're going to see a bureaucracy. Good question. You're very welcome. What else we got? Any last minute questions? Because we can answer them. We hope. You're welcome, Madeline. What do we got? What do we got? I think we've covered a lot of things. Yeah. Great comment, Brain. Hopefully you cannot hear my dog scratching at the door. Um, Self-sufficiency, really what ends up happening is what we're talking about is because manners or fiefs had to be self-sufficient, they had to produce what they needed in order to survive. A lot of labor was needed. A lot of labor. And that meant you couldn't just have people moving in and out of the fiefs, right? You couldn't have people who were free and are like, yeah, I'll do whatever the hell I want to do. I don't care. I don't want to be your thing. You had to have people who were going to do that labor, whether it was farming, whether it was grazing animals, whether it was chopping trees down in the orchards, whether it was repairing roads on the manor, helping repair buildings. You had to have that labor. And so the only way you can have that labor is to force people to do it. And that's why we have the creation of serfdom. You too, Hamilton family. How would we explain how Hinduism and Buddhism affect Indian society? Well, you're welcome. Well, Loris, the first thing we're doing is it creates a strict social hierarchy. So, because of Hinduism, we have a very strict social hierarchy that is going to determine how people are ranked in society. Without Hinduism, we don't have that. So, that's really important to know. Buddhism's effect is you're going to see more rights and more freedoms for women in Indian society because of the belief in equality or egalitarianism. So that might be a couple of specific ways that it affects society. Mhm. Um, for fading constellations, you're not going to know you don't need to know a ton of it. Know a couple of it. Really, the whole goal is to understand that you have to follow the eightfold path to be able to end that desire. That's the real thing is you've got to do all eight of those things to be able to end desire, hence end suffering. For Africa, again, you're going to need to know the Bantu migrations, how the Bantu migrations were instrumental in setting up sub-Saharan Africa in terms of farming and ironworking. You definitely need to know that the spread of Islam is instrumental in the creation of those West African empires like Ghana and Mali, that it creates like a unified religious belief. It leads to the development of formalized education within West Africa, the development of actual empires, especially Mali and Mansa Musa. That's what we're looking for. Ooh, Baureen's got it going with the links going on. Nice. You will not need to know each element of the Eightfold Path. You will need to know the Four Noble Truths without a doubt, because it's really the Four Noble Truths are pretty easy to combine. When you're born, you suffer, and you suffer because you desire things that are you think are going to make you happy, and they don't. And the way to end suffering is to end desire, and the only way to end desire is following that Eightfold Path. So, really, that is a sentence that incorporates all of the Four Noble Truths. The five pillars you do have to know. The Eightfold Path, you do not need to know all eight elements. No. In fact, I think there's a reading passage on the test that actually tells you what the eight elements are. So no. And again, don't completely overthink this. We're not trying to trick you with the exam. There's no really we don't do gotcha questions. We don't believe in them. You are very welcome. What else can we answer for you in the last 4 minutes or so? Oh, you're so welcome. Sure. Oh, Hamilton family, great question. Do you need to know it's Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras? No, you do not need to know that for the test. You should know it for your historical knowledge and know that people were valued over others, but you will not need to identify the different castes in the caste system. No. But yes, you definitely need to know what Dharma is, Karma is, and Samsara. Oh, I'm glad, Loris. That makes me happy. Glad you feel more confident. Anyone else? Any last questions? Breen, should we make any last statements? What are you thinking? Okay, Stasia, that's a great question. Samsara is reincarnation. That's all it is. It's you're being reincarnated. So samsara means the belief in reincarnation and that you're going to be reincarnated the next time. When you have reached that point in the caste system, right, where you're at the top level and your karma is balanced, it's neither too positive, it's neither too negative, it's completely balanced. That is when you reach moksha. That's when basically your soul is released from your body and goes to Hindu heaven. So it takes samsara, multiple reincarnations, to be able to reach moksha. Oh, it's a great analogy, Breen. Poof, you're done. Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great analogy. I love it. All right, I think we got time for one more question. Is there any last question? Who wants to ask the last question of the night? We'll give you 1 minute to type in that question, and if there are no more, then I think that's going to do it for tonight. Okay, so what ends up, Rhea, that's a great question. So when the Roman Empire was in power, it was one big empire with one big leader. Now there were a lot of problems with it, but we're not going to get into that for the purpose of this class. That empire falls apart with all those invasions we talked about, especially with the Huns. It's just they're too big. There's too many problems going on in Rome that leads to the collapse of the Roman Empire. When that Roman Empire collapses, Europe ends up becoming a bunch of different kingdoms. So it's not one big area ruled over by a single leader. It's this kingdom ruled by one leader, and this kingdom ruled by another leader, and this kingdom ruled by another leader, and this kingdom ruled by another leader. So it is now a decentralized region. Okay. And none of the militaries and none of the kings in each of those kingdoms was strong enough to be able to deal with all the invasions that were now happening. The Vikings from the north, the Muslims from the south, the Magyars from the east. You're welcome, Stasia. And so the fall of Rome led to that political decentralization. Let's see if I can find that. Feudal Europe map. If I can find one more map for you guys. Images. Oh, this will be a good one. Yeah? No, that's a terrible one. I'm telling you, Breen, the maps, we need to make a map making business. We would be so much better at it than what we. Oh, these maps are horrific. Is this better? Nope, that's terrible. Let's see. Hold on one second. I'm getting a better map. They just don't like what I see there. Nope, that sucks. All right. I'm just going to give you a map and we're going to go from there. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen real quick. See if I can get you. So as you can see, look to the map on the right-hand side. As you can see, this whole territory used to be under the control of one leader under the Roman Empire. It falls apart and then breaks into a bunch of different kingdoms. And each of these kingdoms has its own leader. And not only are they fighting each other because they all want to be the new Rome, you also have invasions coming from Scandinavia, from the Vikings. You have invasions coming from the south with the Muslims. You have invasions coming from the east with the Magyars. And so it is just one big bucket of chaos in Western Europe. Okay, it's politically decentralized. None of the kingdoms really have a ton of power. They each have their own leader. Nothing's really working. So hopefully that is it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is going to do it for us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. If you thought the live stream was really good, let us know in the comments in YouTube. Like us, like the comments, let other people know that the streaming is valuable. But other than that, we hope you have a great rest of your night. We know you're going to rock it on the exam tomorrow. And other than that, we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.